Clara Monroe was 37 and an English teacher at a high school. Her life was shaped by grammar rules, literary analyses, and quietly endured loneliness. For some time, she hadn't visited her childhood home, the small stone house where she had grown up. The reason was complicated. Perhaps it was her mother Laura's rapidly changing behavior after her divorce, or maybe, as Clara looked at her new life from the outside, her mother now treated Clara like a stranger. But this visit would be different. Clara rehearsed her lines in her mind dozens of times. "Mom, we haven't talked in so long. I miss you." She intended not just reconciliation, but an attempt at genuine understanding. Yet when she knocked, the person who opened the door was not her mother, but a young man. He scanned her from head to toe without meeting her eyes. He wore a hoodie Clara didn't recognize, and behind him she heard the sounds of video games, an energy unfamiliar to her home. The boy looked about 17. Without even saying her name, he spoke directly. "My mom doesn't want you. This is no longer your house." One sentence, short and sharp and destructive. Clara froze. Her eyes landed on the threshold that kept her out. For years, she had walked through that door every holiday, leaving her shoes on that very mat. Now even the doormat felt foreign. "Who are you?" she managed to say. He shrugged, unconcerned. "My name's Shane. I'm Laura's son, so I'm not anything to you." In that moment, Clara's mind echoed only, Laura's son. Her own mother's name, her own blood. But now, behind the door, she was known by someone else. Another family, a different life. Clara's nose stung as she clutched her purse strap so she wouldn't drop it. Before the door shut entirely, a voice called from inside. "Shane!" "Who's that at the door?" "An old guest, Mom. Wrong house," he answered, and the door closed. Clara stood a few seconds on the porch, neither tears nor screams, just a void. Could someone become a stranger in their own home? She grabbed her phone, wanting to message her mother, "I'm here. I want to talk." But her fingers froze. She wasn't even sure there was a mother to receive that message anymore. That night, Clara opened her old notebook and wrote on the first page, "My mother has kicked me out of her home. Perhaps it's time to build my own place. This story doesn't begin here, but it changes here." In the shadow of a truth that couldn't fit on any official document, Clara Monroe's life unfolded. On her birth certificate, Laura's name was listed as her mother, but in reality, Clara was not Laura's biological child. She was a chosen child. She was adopted. She learned this at age 12, accidentally, through a single enraged sentence her mother uttered, "You came after everything else. You're not like my real children." From that day forward, the house's walls grew colder and the hallways stretched longer. Laura always kept her two biological children, Claire and Adam, a step ahead of Clara. On Clara's birthdays, the gifts she received were practical: stationery, sweaters, books. Meanwhile, her siblings got tablets, toys, birthday parties. Clara settled for quiet thank yous. When her mother's friends came over, they'd introduce her this way. "This is Clara." Like a daughter. "Actually, we met at my school. A long story. Then we adopted her." The word "like" drove a rusty knife into Clara's soul. Clara's father, John, was the sole stabilizing presence in that home. Calm, understanding, a quiet man. Sometimes, as he brushed her hair, he'd say, "Family is bound not by blood, but by heart." But even those words couldn't erase the division Laura had sown. For years, Clara lived in that house as if she were a guest. She had a room, but she never had her own corner. She sat at the table, yet the last slice on the plate always belonged to someone else. As soon as she could, she took refuge at school. Books were her truest friends, her teachers, her greatest supporters. That was why she became a teacher herself, because school was the only place she felt truly at home, where she felt valued. And so, she poured everything she had into those classrooms, ensuring other children would never feel as incomplete as she had. Even as an adult, whenever she returned to Laura's house, she carried with her the feeling of entering by invitation only. She had a key, but there was no place behind the door. Clara never uttered a word of protest. She never yelled. She never pounded her fist on any table. Her taught rule was, be grateful, even if you were unloved. But now, the door had slammed in her face. Gratitude's mask lay discarded on the ground. In her room was an old chest filled with letters, photographs, and the childhood diary she'd kept for years. That night, she opened it and found a note written in her 9-year-old handwriting. If one day I can't stay in this house, is the fault mine? Or is it the fact that I was invisible in their eyes? Clara held the note on her knees and looked at her empty room. Softly, she said, "How can someone belong if they're unseen?" But this time, a voice answered from behind. "They can't belong, but they can create their own place." It was Camille, her closest friend for years. Seeing Clara on a video call, she understood without words. Clara simply bowed her head. Camille said, "Those who lose their homes build their stories, Clara. Your story is just beginning." Clara first realized that a new person had entered her mother's life via social media. It was a vacation photo, Laura at the seaside leaning into a young man. The comments were full of hearts, laughing emojis, and one line, "Life really does begin at 60 starburst." At first, Clara dismissed the photo. Her mother always loved attention, but then more pictures appeared. Family dinners, movie tickets, family nights, and in every photo, the same man, Ethan. One day, Camille looked over at Clara while they sipped coffee and asked, "Who is this Ethan? Do you know him?" Clara stared at the phone screen. There was something familiar about the man's face, a shadow in her memory, but her mind couldn't place it, so she didn't think much of it. Her mother's relationships were always temporary, but this time felt different, because Laura was sharing more about Ethan than any partner before, and she wasn't tagging Clara in the comments anymore. As her mother moved on, Clara seemed to vanish from Laura's life. One day, Camille showed Clara a social media post. Laura and Ethan were sitting in Clara's old living room. Behind them, Clara's carefully arranged bookshelf still stood. "Isn't this your house?" Camille asked. Clara simply nodded. After the divorce, Laura had taken full ownership of the house once shared with Clara's father. In that living room, Clara had moved in as a child. She had arranged that bookshelf with her very first teaching salary. She had baked her own birthday cakes in that kitchen. Now, in those same walls, another man held her mother's hand. Ethan, in every picture, looked through Clara with a blank stare. He was an outsider, younger than she was, but uncannily familiar in a way that made Clara uneasy. One night, suddenly, Clara sat bolt upright in bed. She opened her laptop and searched Ethan Wells' Facebook. The profile was old, but a few comments from classmates caught her eye. "Hey Ethan, back to tormenting teachers? Old times. Is Clara Monroe still around? I loved your class in high school, bro." Clara's fingers froze. No, he couldn't be. The whole picture fell into place. The eyes on the screen were those of a boy she had taught as a high school teacher. Ethan Wells was one of her former students, and now he was her mother's boyfriend. Seconds of stunned silence, then one thought seethed inside her. Everything from here on will be its own kind of test. That night, she wrote, "I thought I'd lost my mother. Perhaps she never truly knew me. Now, in this new life built around someone she knows, who am I? And who is he?" The next morning, Clara remembered it was her birthday. In the past, that date meant not only getting a year older, but hoping for a call or a happy birthday message from her mother to feel that childhood warmth. But that wasn't the case anymore. Still, a small seed of hope, however buried, can sprout in anyone's heart. So she decided to do something. She got ready and brought a box of homemade cupcakes to her mother's house, along with a small gift, a book for Laura. Maybe it would take just 10 minutes to see each other, but Clara wanted to believe that 10 minutes could thaw a decade of frost. When she arrived, the flowers she remembered on the balcony rail were still there, but the door's tone had been repainted, as though they were attempting to wipe away the past. She rang the bell. Shane opened it, expressionless but with a mocking curl at his mouth. "Back again?" he sneered, then called, Laura! A stranger's here. Several seconds later, her mother appeared in the hallway, holding a wine glass, her face betraying annoyance. Clara held out the gift box. "Today's my birthday," she said. "I just wanted to say hi. Maybe we could have coffee." Laura rolled her eyes and approached with slow steps. Her voice dropped to a hiss as sharp as a snake's bite. "Clara, you're always so dramatic. I don't want you making problems in my life right now. You're embarrassing us. You have no place here anymore. Is that so hard to understand?" The smile on Clara's face crumpled instantly, and the box she clutched felt heavier in her hands. "Mom, I only—" "No, say nothing," Laura snapped. "The story ended long ago, Clara." At that moment, laughter erupted from inside. Shane chimed in. "Happy birthday, Clara!" "Maybe next year you'll be less of a spectacle." Laughter followed. And Ethan was there too, his face barely visible in the background. Their eyes met briefly. He said nothing, just smiled that familiar cold smile as though he knew a secret she did not. Clara's hands trembled. She didn't drop the gift box. She simply turned and walked away. The street was quiet, but Clara heard her mother's cold words and Shane's mocking laughter echoing in her ears. She sat on the curb, stared at the box. The cupcakes inside felt stale, and the gift felt like a lump in her throat. In that moment, she could not write in her notebook. Instead, one sentence formed in her mind. To be exiled from a mother's love is not death, but a living void. Today is my birthday, and I belong nowhere. When Clara closed the car door behind her, everything tuned itself to a muted silence. She set the birthday box on the passenger seat, looked out the window at her mother's door still wide open, and saw laughter inside, like a scene she had somehow stumbled into by accident. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel, her heart pounded, her vision blurred, but no words came. Finally, tears she had held back for years poured out like a dam breaking. She cried, but this cry held more anger than pain, knots unloosed in the throat of someone who had stayed silent for so long. "They don't shame me," she whispered. "They shame my silence. But that silence is over." As she wiped her eyes, a notification sounded on her phone. It was not from her mother, but from a former student. "Ms. Monroe, thanks to you I won a scholarship. I wanted to thank you." Clara paused. Then she opened the message. "In high school I was going through a rough time, but you always noticed me. You praised my first poem in class. No one ever told me I was talented. Because of you, I got into college. Because of you, I didn't give up. Happy birthday, Ms. Monroe." Her tears now flowed not from sorrow, but from a sense of being seen. More notifications followed. "Happy birthday, Ms. Monroe. Your literature lessons were the best. The book you gave me is still by my bedside." Suddenly, memories of classroom moments flooded her mind, students reading poetry, a pupil crying in her desk as Clara gently held her hand. A small kindness to Clara might have been just a moment, but to that student, it had meant a lifetime. Clara, gathering herself in the car, inhaled deeply. Her phone screen still glowed. She looked in the rearview mirror at her reflection. "Was I broken?" she asked. "Yes." "Was I alone? Number?" "Because a classroom full of children still stands with me." She pressed the accelerator and set a new course, one not back to her mother's house, but to herself. Her notebook reflected, "My mother never saw me. But I found my family in the classroom. And that love? It is enough." On the morning of the ceremony, the school corridors buzzed with excitement. Colorful flowers adorned the walls, banners fluttered overhead. The school band practiced in the hallway. It was Honor Night, the annual celebration of student achievements, community projects, and, of course, the Teacher of the Year award. As Clara applied her makeup in front of the mirror that morning, she looked into her own eyes for a moment. Lately, she had confronted those eyes often, tired, hurt, but still standing. In the back of her closet, she found a dark green dress she hadn't worn in years. Simple, elegant, much like herself, unassuming, but strong. Arriving at school, a few students ran up to her. "Mrs. Monroe, you look amazing." Are you ready for your big moment? We have a surprise, but we can't tell you yet. Clara smiled, grateful to be there despite her weariness, because the classroom was never just her job. It was the place she felt truly valued. Inside the auditorium, teachers, students, and parents filled the seats. The stage was lit with soft spotlights, and the words, "Teacher of the Year," stood large at the center. The announcer took the microphone. And now, please welcome the teacher who has made a difference not only through achievements, but through her heart. A wave of applause erupted. Clara Monroe! Clara's heart skipped. She rose and walked forward as the standing ovation continued. Her students were on their feet, some wiping away tears. As she reached the stage and accepted the small, gleaming plaque, Clara's real prize was the proud smile she felt blossoming on her face. Taking the microphone, she paused for a breath, scanning the room, parents, students, colleagues. Her family was not there, but she saw faces that saw her. I am deeply honored to stand here as Teacher of the Year, she began. Teaching isn't just about passing on knowledge. Sometimes it's about being seen when you feel invisible. Thank you, all of you, for seeing me. And to those who have never seen me, I promise I will continue to stand here. The audience applauded again, filling the auditorium with warmth. Students presented her with a surprise, a large photograph of her in class tucked into a frame and inscribed, "You saw us first. Now it's our turn." When the ceremony ended, Clara drove home and parked by her desk. She didn't set the plaque on a shelf. She placed it where she wrote. She thought, "They didn't come tonight, but I didn't sit at their table for years. Now I have my own table, surrounded by love." The next morning, the principal knocked on her door unannounced. His face still carried the glow of last night's celebration. "Clara," he said, "you were incredible yesterday." "I am so proud." Clara offered a shy smile of thanks, but the principal continued, "There's one thing I noticed. Your family wasn't here. Perhaps I am being too sentimental, but on a night like that, a mother's presence matters. Maybe next year you can invite them." Clara felt words catch in her throat. She swallowed and smiled. "Yes, you're right. Maybe I should try." After he left, she reached for her phone, tapped Mom from her contacts. Mom was still saved, but their relationship had long since been erased. With trembling fingers, she typed, "Last night, at the ceremony, I accepted the Teacher of the Year award. I had invited you to be there. I wanted you to know." She sent the message. The screen said, "Delivered," but the blue check marks never appeared. Hours passed. The day ended. No reply. Just when she thought all hope was gone, around midnight her phone chimed again. But the message was from Shane, not her mother. "Mom says she doesn't want to be associated with you. She said she doesn't even want to hear your name. Please never act as if you belong to this family. It's best for everyone." Clara's phone nearly slipped from her grasp. Belong to this family? Those words compressed all years of silence into one sentence. Outside, rain began to patter against the window as if the world joined her unspoken grief. Her mother had not only refused to answer, she had erased Clara, first from words, then from existence. Clara sank into her chair, staring at the award plaque labeled Teacher of the Year, yet feeling exiled in her own skin. She opened her notebook and wrote, "I used to feel like I never belonged. Now I know I don't. To be the daughter of a woman who didn't want me was not my deficiency." She paused. What if someone turns this entire story upside down? Clara had seen online that her mother was throwing a grand party for Ethan's birthday, lights, decorations, laughing people, and a caption reading, "In honor of my most special man, Ethan's birthday." Her mother couldn't remember Clara's birthday, but she'd decorated the entire house for Ethan's. Rationally, Clara told herself, "Don't go. This isn't your world." But the little girl inside her, still hoping for one last crumb of approval, wouldn't be silenced. Clara got ready, neither overdressed nor sloppy. A simple dress, light lipstick, hair pulled back. During her drive, she tried to convince herself, maybe I'll just say hi. Maybe she'll remember and hug me. When she arrived, music thumped from inside, and lights illuminated the yard. Strangers welcomed onto the porch. She weaved through them and approached the door. A bouncer asked, "Are you on the guest list?" Clara gave a small, confident smile. "I am Laura's daughter." The bouncer let her pass without a word. A moment later, she saw the person who drove another dagger into her heart. Shane, holding a drink, gave her not even a glance as he said, "Why are you here? We clearly told you not to bother Mom." Clara's mouth fell open, still hoping to catch a glimpse of her mother inside. But Laura was in the living room, arm in arm with Ethan. She was laughing. Someone was snapping a photo. Clara took a step forward, but Shane raised a hand. "Don't make me call security." Inside, Ethan's laughter rose again, followed by Laura's voice. "Tonight, the past is gone. Let's talk about the future." Hearing those words, Clara understood. In that moment, her existence was not simply unwanted, she was being actively denied. She turned and walked away. The stones under her feet felt heavier with each step. Once inside her car, she slumped down before starting the engine. She thought of the cupcakes. They felt stale. The gift felt useless. She could not write in her notebook in that instant, but in her mind she formed a line. "I did not belong there. To be absent from one's mother is not a loss, but freedom." Then her phone buzzed. It was a voicemail, short and unmistakably familiar. "Ms. Clara Monroe, I recognize you. It's Ethan. Do you recall?" The softness in his voice contained a tremor. Was it surprise or a long-repressed astonishment? Clara's mind swirled. She and Ethan had never spoken, at least that's what she believed. Now her mother's new boyfriend knew her full name, her surname. Clara didn't reply, but she felt a pull toward the truth, and the next morning she did the unthinkable. During a free period at school, she sent Ethan a message. "Yes, I am Clara Monroe. How do you know me?" His reply arrived immediately. "You taught me to love literature in 10th grade. You carried that bit of red notebook around, always reading poems. Back then my name was Ethan Wallace. Now I go by my mother's last name, Wells." Clara's hands went numb. Wallace. The name detonated in her memory. Ethan Wallace. The rowdy boy who sat in the back of her classroom 100 times, his eyes wandering as if to some other world. Yes, Ethan Wallace, one of the lost children of that class whom other teachers labeled problematic, but whom Clara had recognized as secretly gifted. One day, she had left him a small book, Emily Dickinson's poems, with margin notes. "The power of words can heal a silence." Ethan's message continued. "That book is still with me. When I saw the news about you on social media and learned you were my mother's partner, I wasn't sure at first. But when you were turned away on your own birthday, I knew. I remembered your eyes." Clara's heart pounded. Past and present collided in her head. Her mother's boyfriend had been her teacher. He had admired her once and had not forgotten. She waited a long time to respond. Then, gathering her courage, she typed, "Some students watch you in silence for years, then show up out of nowhere. Ethan Wallace is no longer a boy, but I am still the same teacher from that class. Something's amiss in this story, and it's time to set it right." 2 days after the party, a strange hush had fallen over Laura's house. The raucous music, the laughter, the dancing crowds had been replaced by a tense air. Shane had gone to his room. Laura sat alone in the kitchen with a cup of coffee. Ethan stood in the living room, holding the old, tattered poetry book, Emily Dickinson's poems, that Clara had once given him. Though yellowed with age, the pages and Clara's handwritten notes still glowed with life. Her underlined words offered him a small lamp in his younger darkness. When Laura re-entered the living room, Ethan looked up, serious but composed. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Laura hesitated. "Tell you what?" Ethan held up the book, then spoke in a low but insistent voice. "You never told me about Clara, the woman who saved my life." Laura stepped back, unable to speak. He continued, "I was in 10th grade. My father was in prison. My mother didn't want me. One night I went to the roof, ready to run away. But the next day, Clara gave me this book. Don't run away from your words. she told me. And for the first time, I felt seen. Laura sank into a chair, unable to meet his eyes. Ethan's next words came in a whisper that filled the room. At your birthday party, you turned her away. Now I understand. Before I knew you, I knew her, and I watched what you did to her. Laura was silent. For the first time, she felt shame on her face. Those were the first cracks in the carefully crafted order of her life, created by the man she had chosen above her own child. Ethan fell silent, then added, You forgot a teacher's name, but I remember. It saved me. The house was silent save for the ticking of a clock. Laura retreated to her room. Ethan reached for his phone and typed a message to Clara. I mistreated you. You deserved better. I am sorry. Clara was gathering her lesson plans when her phone buzzed. The message read, You once gave me a voice. I can't stay silent now. I owe you that. Clara read the message and paused. This truth felt both painful and redeeming. Asking herself, Is this just coincidence or fate? She wrote in her notebook that night. Some students watch you in silence for years, then open a door into your past. Ethan Wallace is no longer a boy, but I am still the teacher who stayed behind that desk. Something's wrong in this story, and now it's time to put it right. That evening, Laura hosted a small dinner. Her sister, 2 cousins, and Shane gathered around the table. The conversation was light, Laura whispering something to Ethan, Shane smirking. One cousin asked, Whatever happened to that English teacher, Clara? Didn't she cause a scene at her birthday party? Laura laughed. Oh, Clara, she was always so dramatic. She'd spin a tragic tale out of anything. Shane snickered. Still writing poems, I bet. Saving the world or something. Everyone laughed while Ethan remained still, his brow slightly furrowed, one hand clenched on the table's edge. Then, without warning, he spoke. That's enough. His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried a weight that plunged the room into sudden silence. All eyes turned to him as he rose and fixed his gaze on Laura. You never told them who Clara was or what she meant to me. Laura averted her eyes. Ethan, that's not necessary right here. But Ethan wouldn't be silent. She saved me. While you mocked me, she lifted me up. Laura was speechless. Just then, the doorbell rang. To everyone's surprise, it was Clara. She stood in the doorway. Ethan took a couple of quick steps forward, but Clara said without stepping in, I wasn't kicked out of my home because I asked for too much. I was kicked out because I existed. I came merely to see my mother. At the table, shame fell over the faces. Ethan immediately approached her and, in front of everyone, bowed his head to her. Welcome, Ms. Monroe. They looked at one another. In Laura's eyes, for a single heartbeat, there was shock, quickly replaced by shame and then denial and distance. But Clara's eyes held no anger or pride, only a calmness that carried years of weariness but no longer bore burden. Ethan moved closer and asked softly, Would you like to come in? Clara shook her head slightly. Number, I only need to say this. Behind her, cousins watched in stony silence, and Shane's lips curled in contempt. No one could stop her words now. She chose them carefully. I didn't come to demand respect. I came only to see my mother. Laura took a step forward, but Clara continued. You made me feel unwelcome here for years. Every birthday I came hoping you'd remember. But you didn't. Not now. Not ever. Ethan was silent, and his presence framed her words. The weight of her truth settled on everyone silently. He said nothing more until Clara added, I have been broken, but not defeated. To be the daughter of a woman who cannot love me is not my flaw. Then she turned and walked away, her steps neither flee nor charge, but simply moving forward. The door closed behind her, and the room grew still. Shane tried to speak, but Ethan silenced him with a glance. Laura stared at the door, her daughter gone. For the first time, really seeing her and realizing it was too late. Clara sat in her car, head against the steering wheel, and whispered, Some mothers can give birth but cannot raise. I have raised myself now." At that very moment she received a voicemail from Ethan. Short, deep, and familiar. "Clara Monroe? It's Ethan. Do you remember?" Clara played it over and over. "Clara Monroe? It's Ethan. Do you remember?" His voice was soft but quivered. He was either curious or surprised that the woman he thought he'd lost was still there. She realized in her mind, Ethan, her former student, now her mother's partner. He had admired her and never forgotten. She let the message sit unanswered for a time, thinking, is this coincidence or some cosmic trick? That night she wrote, "Some students watch you in silence for years, then open a door into your past. Ethan is no longer a boy, but I remain the teacher who stayed behind that desk. Something's off in this story, and now it's time to set it right." 2 days after Laura's party, there was a strange hush at her house. Loud music, laughter, dancing were replaced by a tense stillness. Shane retreated to his room. Laura drank coffee alone in the kitchen. Ethan stood in the living room clutching the old Dickinson book, Clara's gift, its pages still brimming with her handwritten encouragement. The power of words can heal. When Laura re-entered the living room, Ethan met her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me about Clara?" "The woman whose name is like a lifeline to me." Laura recoiled but said nothing. He continued, "In 10th grade I was broken. My father in prison, my mother gone. I was ready to give up, but then you sent Clara to me." "You have words," she said. "That day I began to write, to save myself." Laura sat down, guilt rendering her speechless. Ethan added quietly, "At your party, you turned her away. I watched it happen. You tried to erase her name from your world." Laura closed her eyes, ashamed. Her carefully controlled world was crumbling. That night, Ethan texted Clara, "I want to speak with you. I know I was wrong. I owe you." Clara wrote in her lesson plans when she felt the phone vibrate. The message read, "You once gave me a voice. Now I can't stay silent. I owe you that." Clara held her phone in stunned silence, then turned her gaze to the empty teacher's desk in her classroom. She thought, some parents can ignore, but a teacher's voice can reach across years. That night she wrote in her notebook, "I believed I'd lost my mother. Perhaps she never really knew me. Now, in a life she built around someone else, who am I? And who is he?" Laura thought she controlled everything, her new partner, her lavish parties, her social circle, but control shatters at a single truth. That day, Laura organized a small family dinner, her sister, 2 cousins, and Shane at the table. The conversation was light until one cousin remarked, "What happened to Clara Monroe, that teacher? Seems her birthday party was quite the drama." Laura laughed dismissively. "Oh, Clara, she's always been dramatic, inventing a tragic story for herself." Shane snorted. "Guess she still thinks herself some great poet." While everyone laughed, Ethan rose, his gaze fixed. "Enough." His tone chilled the room. He met Laura's eyes. "You hid her from them, from me too. But let me tell you, she saved my life." Laura averted her gaze. Ethan pursued, "When you mocked me, she lifted me. You didn't see her as your daughter. I did, and I still do." No one spoke. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Startled, Laura answered to find Clara standing there. Ethan rushed up behind Clara, but she said without entering, "You kicked me out of my home. Now I need only one thing, to see you." Utter shame fell over the diners. Ethan stepped forward and bowed to her in front of everyone. "Welcome, Ms. Monroe." They locked eyes. Laura's face registered shock, quickly followed by shame and habitual denial, but Clara's eyes held neither indignation nor pride, only quietness, a weariness finally freed. Ethan stepped closer. "Would you like to come inside?" Clara shook her head. "No. I only want to say this. I came to see my mother." The cousins watched in silence. Shane's lips curled scornfully. Nothing could stop her. She spoke deliberately. "You made me feel like I didn't belong here for years. Every birthday I hoped you'd remember, but you never did. Not now, not ever." Ethan stood quietly. Laura was utterly speechless. Words had never been her strong suit, but they failed her now. Clara added, "I have been broken, but not defeated. To be the daughter of a mother who cannot love me is not my flaw." Then she turned and left, her steps neither hurried nor hesitant, simply forward. The door closed, and silence reigned. Shane opened his mouth, but Ethan stopped him with a look. Laura stared at the door, really seeing her daughter for the first time, but it was too late. Clara sank into her car seat, head against the wheel, and whispered, "Some mothers give birth but cannot raise. I learned to raise myself." That very moment, Ethan left a voicemail. "Ms. Clara Monroe, I recognize you. It's Ethan. Do you remember?" Clara replayed it repeatedly. "Clara Monroe? It's Ethan. Do you remember?" His voice trembled with genuine emotion, the astonishment of seeing her again. Clara held back her response, thinking, coincidence or fate? That night she wrote, "Some students watch you in silence for years, then open a door into your past. Ethan is no longer a boy, but I remain the teacher who stayed behind that desk. Something's off in this story, and now it's time to set it right." 2 days after Laura's party, Clara found the house shrouded in a strange hush. Ethan stood in the living room with the old Dickinson book, now the heart of the room, and Laura sat drinking coffee alone, haunted by what she saw. Meanwhile, Clara carried on in her life, teaching, writing, and envisioning a future unbound by her mother's absence. Weeks passed. Autumn leaves turned amber in schoolyards. Yet Clara walked the same hallways with new purpose, a steady step, head held high, knowing she was no longer alone. One morning, during a school assembly, she was invited to speak at another high school, to give a talk titled, "How a Teacher Can Transform a Life." As she walked onto that stage, she no longer searched for a familiar face. She didn't need to be seen anymore. Her voice was her own witness. When her speech ended, the audience gave her a standing ovation. As students lined up for autographs, one approached her holding an old poem, Emily Dickinson's book, the well-thumbed collection Clara had lent Ethan years ago. Underneath, a note said, "You said I had a voice." That changed my life. Clara felt deep tears well up, but this time they flowed from presence, not pain. She realized a single moment in class had set a chain reaction of kindness. From that moment on, Laura's presence faded further from Clara's consciousness. Sometimes a mother's love can't be regained, but a child can find new affirmation in unexpected places. One day, as spring warmed the air and new beginnings bloomed, Clara got an email from the school system. Subject line, "Congratulations, Doctor. Clara Monroe." She initially thought it was a mistake, but when she opened it, her heart filled with awe. A prestigious university was awarding her an honorary doctorate for her impact on education. The ceremony was scheduled in a few weeks and would be broadcast live across television and the internet. When word spread, the school erupted in celebration. Banners reading, "We're proud of Dr. Monroe," hung in the hallways. Camille helped her choose an outfit for the event, and Ethan simply said, "This time, you won't be alone on that stage. We're all with you." On the day of the ceremony, the hall was packed. Students, academics, parents, local press. As they called her name, Clara's steps felt like a journey she had traveled before. The announcer even referenced Ethan's famous social media post. In 10th grade, a lost boy found his voice because of this teacher. An abandoned daughter found her path. Today, she reminds us all what teaching can truly mean. Clara walked onto that stage amid thunderous applause. Her colleagues, students, and even new admirers stood in her honor. Every face glowed with recognition, and in that moment, she felt the love of a community that saw her. She took the podium. "This honor belongs not only to me, but to everyone who believed in me when I felt invisible. I was once the daughter who was forgotten at her own table. Today I stand here, and I promise I will keep standing." The crowd erupted again, less for the medal and more for the woman who carried their hearts on her back. Meanwhile, back at Laura's house, a different kind of silence reigned. Laura sat transfixed in front of the television, tears streaming down her cheeks, quiet tears that spoke of regret, admiration, and loss. For the first time, she truly saw her daughter on that screen, not just as a teacher or a woman, but as the owner of her own life. That night, Clara wrote in her notebook, "They watched me, but now they cannot ignore me." The next morning, as Clara sipped coffee by her window, she reflected on the words that had changed everything. They watched me, but now they cannot ignore me. She had never intended to check her mailbox that day, yet Camille called from the front yard. "Clara, an envelope just arrived for you. It's handwritten." Odd. Clara walked to the door, retrieved the pristine white envelope addressed to Clara Monroe, in handwriting she recognized immediately, her mother's. No sender, but the weight of the writing told her who it was from. Slowly, she opened it. Inside lay a carefully folded letter, its handwriting trembling with age but brimming with sincerity. "Clara, I have waited years to write this letter because I realized that to truly apologize, I had to try to understand you. I belittled you and ran from you in shame. Yes, that word, shame, because I feared the strength in you. In you, I saw qualities I never had. I didn't know how to be your mother, so I chose to control instead of love. In doing so, I lost you. Watching you last night, standing proud in front of the world, made me see the daughter I destroyed. If it isn't too late, please know, I am sorry. From your mother, Laura." Clara read those words, tears softly falling, tears of understanding rather than pain. It was the first time her mother had spoken to her as a human being, and while that mattered, Clara no longer needed those words to feel whole. They offered completion, not a new beginning. That night, she wrote, "To receive an apology late is to close a circle, but a grown child does not return to an empty nest." When Camille offered to help her respond, Clara tucked the letter into a special box hidden away. Some letters are meant only for processing one's own emotions, not for sending out. Her mother's words were not a new chapter. They were an epilogue she read and then set aside. They were no longer a lifeline, but a final, quiet punctuation. As autumn's golden leaves drifted across school lawns, Clara continued her work at school, walking the familiar halls with new purpose. Invitations came for her to speak at conferences. During one event, Emerging Educators Conference, Clara seated herself quietly in the back row, waiting for Ethan, now headlining the keynote. When Ethan took the podium, he wore a tailored suit, his demeanor mature, yet his opening lines brimmed with warmth and nostalgia. "I'm Ethan Wells. Today, I will speak about how education transformed a life. But first, a story. There was a boy, angry, silent, unseen, until someone said to him, 'You have words.' The room fell silent. Clara felt her breath catch as Ethan scanned the audience until he found her. "I am here today because of one teacher. Her name is Clara Monroe. Tonight I want to celebrate the woman whose belief saved me." The audience leapt to its feet, applause thunderous. Clara never stood, she simply watched, tears glistening. Ethan continued, "She taught me that true strength comes from vulnerability. I want to be more like her, soft and strong." Clara, eyes brimming with emotion, watched Ethan step down as students surrounded him for photos, but he was not alone. He walked up to her and said, "Dr. Monroe, I am so grateful for the life you gave me." Clara exhaled in relief, replying simply, "You speak your truth well." That night she wrote, "I sought a mother but found a student. Now I see family begins with being seen. My name is Clara Monroe. I belong here." Months later, just as spring lent warmth and hope anew to her life, school administrators announced, "Introducing our next keynote speaker, Dr. Ethan Wells." Clara had not planned to attend, but changed her mind when she saw the invitation note, signed, "Remember, you gave me my first voice. Now I share it with others." E.W. That morning, Clara arrived early. The auditorium filled quickly. When Ethan stepped up to speak, he didn't look for familiar faces, he simply presented, confident. I was the lost child in 10th grade. My teacher told me I had words. Because of her, I began to write. She was my family. Clara sat in the audience, invisible yet entirely present. When the room erupted in applause, she felt the culmination of every challenge she had overcome. After the event, as first-time educator candidates gathered for photos, a single figure slipped in at the back row. Her mother, Laura. For the first time, Laura stood in the shadow of the daughter she once cast aside. Clara felt her pulse quicken. She watched Laura hesitantly approach Ethan and said in a low voice, "I'm Laura Monroe. Thank you for honoring my daughter." Clara's breath hitched. She had not expected apology or understanding. She simply looked at her mother and said, "Thank you for coming." It was neither a hug nor a farewell, simply a moment of acknowledgement. Laura's face held sorrow and gratitude, and Clara's calm gaze offered closure. Clara returned home that night, the cherry blossoms in bloom, and wrote, "To be a teacher is to give someone hope. Tonight I received a gift, seeing my mother stand in that promise." In the following days, as she sipped her morning coffee watching the sunrise, Clara penned her final note. "Some mothers give birth but cannot raise. Some students become our chosen family. I am a daughter who learned to love herself, and that is enough." And with that, Clara Monroe, once unseen, always resilient, walked forward into a life defined not by the home she lost, but by the heart she built.